Last June, the company suddenly collapsed, with massive debts of over £14 million, taking thousands of its customers' cash. Many thousands more customers have been left with worthless 10-year guarantees on their windows. The great British breakthrough was well and truly broken.
I've lost £10,000 at the moment by being persuaded to pay up front for redoing my windows in my house.
They insisted that the firm was doing very well, that business had never been better, and that they had just built a new factory.
They would never have got the order originally if I knew there was any intention of not supplying the windows.
It's hardly surprising that around 10,000 people a year, like the Smarts from Hainault in Essex, chose Thermistor windows. The personalities seemingly endorsing the product could not have been more impressive. When the then Prime Minister opened the Thermistor factory at Peterborough in 1983, she told Chairman John Morris he had a success story on his hands. But it wasn't just Margaret Thatcher who praised them. Here's Ruth Maddock from Heidi High. Television personality Raymond Baxter. Footballer Trevor Brooking with his Thermistor windows. The man behind the company, self-made millionaire John Morris, who took it from virtually nothing to nearly £30 million a year. But while he appeared to be running a successful business, for 4 out of the last 5 years, Thermistor was trading at a loss. By early last year, it was insolvent, yet still the brochure promised no risks to customers. Customers like the Southampton teachers who live here. Pauline Barrow and her husband were careful to pay only a small deposit on their order for Thermistor windows. It's what we always recommend on Watchdog, because then, if the company does go bust, you haven't lost everything. But days before Thermistor went into receivership, they actually persuaded Pauline and many others like her to pay up in advance in full, so they lost the lot.
Good news for current customers.
Customers who sent in deposits got back this enthusiastic letter from Thermistor.
Cash with order discount of 7.5% for all.
This special offer continued to be sent out during May and June, although the directors should have known Thermistor was going bust.
Take up this money-saving offer.
The main attack, as it were, came from Thermistor itself, both in this letter and in a telephone call which encouraged us again to take the cash offer of another 7.5% off.
Vic and Margaret Smart got the letter too, then some phone calls. They paid, and it cost them all the money Margaret had, £6,100.
My wife had been left some money by her late father, and we intended to pay for the house to be done out of that money.
Well, my dad just worked hard all their life and they saved it. They just wanted us to enjoy it. So I thought, save wasting it, I'll have windows and I can always remember him.
Now, it's certainly unusual to ask your customers for all their money up front, but that might have been fine if back here at the factory their windows were actually being made and their orders being processed. But we've discovered what really happened to most of the people who paid in full. Not only were their windows not being made, their orders were deliberately filed away and not touched. If they rang up to find out what was happening, they were told lies.
We had a system given where we had a list of all the contracts which were ready to go to the factory. We put a blue dot, believe it or not, on contracts which are paid in full, and they was left, and obviously we could recognise them straight off.
If a customer rang up with a blue dot against their name, what did you tell them?
We were told, obviously, to tell them that the contract was in the process of being manufactured, or their contract was being processed for manufacture, and there would be a further delay of 2 weeks.
But what in reality had happened to their contract?
Well, as I say, they had been put to one side and left in a cabinet.
These are the production sheets for the factory. They show that in May and June of last year, the workload had dropped dramatically. The factory was on short time. Then, on June the 25th, Chairman John Morris decided Thermistor was finished. He rang a firm of accountants to take the company into receivership. That very day, at least 18 customers' cheques, payments in full, including this one from the Barrows, were being paid into the bank. The receiver, Barry Lewis, was extremely concerned when he found out.
Yes, there's no question that during the last 6 or 8 weeks of trading, the company, because of its cash flow situation, could not buy any materials. Most of the major suppliers had put them on stop, and they could not buy the glass, the frames, the accessories that are required to make the windows. And I would say that on the Monday, having made the phone call to myself, that cheques should not have been banked after that date.
They should not?
Should not have been banked.
Last month, angry customers caught up with Mr. Morris outside a creditors' meeting in Cambridge. He denied that production could not meet orders, that orders were deliberately put aside, and that he knew the business was insolvent before the collapse.
Can I ask you why you offered 7.5% cash discount for complete payment when you could see that the company was so rocky?
The company traditionally, since its inception, took prepayments.
That was a deposit.
Well, prepayments.
Yeah.
Well,
No, we've had work done before, and we never paid in full before we had the job done
traditionally,
before.
the company always had a system of prepayments.
With
and
your
people,
company, you've done nearly all our work,
well,
and this is the first time that you've asked and offered money in advance
well,
with an extra discount.
Traditionally, that's always been the policy of the company, to offer a cash with order discount. It's prevalent throughout the home improvement industry.
Well,
there is nothing particularly new in there.
Yeah,
But his own internal memo from last April reveals
it has been decided a cash with order discount of 7.5% should be given to new customers, and we should write to all existing customers.
And 4 days later, his managing director told him how much cash they might raise.
The attached letter was sent to 660 customers on Saturday the 21st of April, with a total contract value of approximately £2.85 million.
I think it's appalling. They cash our cheque on the day before they're taken into liquidation. They must have known right back when they first started advertising the discounts. They must have known that there was trouble.
Cashed on the 25th, cleared on the 27th, acknowledged on the 27th.
I don't believe that's
store
true.
heavy
The
paper.
instruction, I know for a fact that the instruction was quite clear. That all of the cheques that were received were returned to the customers. Now, if some got through, then that was very unfortunate, but it wasn't intentional.
It was also unfortunate that hundreds of suppliers lost money. While customers' cash was being taken in full, Thermostore cheques were bouncing to suppliers like this family printing firm. They lost nearly £30,000.
The cheques that started to bounce, and clearly they were just fobbing me off. Absolutely deplorable that any big company, any national company, any company but a national company with a reputed turnover that they had, I think it really is disgraceful.
Just days before the collapse of Thermostore, the printers got wind of a phoenix about to arise from the ashes. They were asked to produce price lists for a company called Thermostore Commercial Limited.
I deliberately held on to the artwork, knowing full well that they wanted it desperately. And even up until 3 days before the receivers were put in, they were demanding that we do this printing for them. Well, we didn't. And if we did, they would have owed us more money.
On the day that I was appointed, Mr. Morris immediately approached me and said to me that he would like to take over the company's order book, which at that time I was advised was in excess of £5 million, into a company which he had already set up and for which there was a factory all ready to roll, and take over the order book and continue production as if nothing had happened.
John Morris was proposing to change the name and do the same.
That's right.
Did you not have a rescue plan with Thermostore Commercial? Wasn't that what you were trying to do?
When the administrator was appointed to the company, he wanted a window to be able to sell the company as an ongoing business. And the only way he felt that he could do that was if the whole of the sales force were kept together. These are commission-only agents, and they're people that would need to be able to be kept in one unit to provide the marketing strength for the company to be sold as an ongoing business, which would have been to the benefit of the customers and of the employees of the business. Our efforts were in that direction.
Hello, I'm calling on behalf of Tesrac Windows.
But we've discovered a different direction. This sales script to be used to sell Tesrac windows, the trading name John Morris was proposing to use for Thermostore Commercial. This handwritten letter, dated the day after the receivership, with a hastily changed letter heading, promises that the telephone salespeople will be paid by the new company. But unfortunately for Mr. Morris, his plan failed.
Perhaps not now, but for the future sometime.
The man who stopped him was his administrative receiver, Barry Lewis.
I was extremely dubious and concerned about this, and I would not and did not give my consent to Mr. Morris's company taking over the order book in any shape or form.
Thermistor Commercial Limited ceased trading days later. It was just one of a number of John Morris companies. 6 out of 7 of those companies are now in liquidation, with huge debts totalling £20 million. Here's where some of the Thermistor money went. Mr. Morris's mansion, Fulbrook House, in the middle of the Surrey countryside. Thermistor paid thousands for all sorts of household expenses, from carpets and light bulbs to the cleaner and the handyman. Mr. Morris claimed the house was frequently used for business entertaining, hence the use of company money. Mr. Morris certainly enjoyed a lavish lifestyle at Thermistor's expense, including use of a yacht. As the company was sinking, he did not cut back on luxuries, like regular business trips in the company-owned helicopter. He was grounded when the company collapsed, and his helicopter, Aston Martin and Bentley were repossessed. The director's lifestyle before the collapse worries Mr. Lewis.
The group still owned its helicopter. There were still expensive cars being run. The amounts that were being paid by way of salary and remuneration were still very significant. There doesn't appear to have been any change in the way in which the company was being operated and the manner in which Mr. Morris was taking his remuneration and benefits.
Would you think this reckless of a director?
I would think it was extremely reckless, knowing that he had consumers' money under his charge.
When a big business goes bust, it's a terrible tragedy for everybody. But it's no less a tragedy for the owners. It's no less a tragedy for the directors, the staff, the suppliers, the customers, and everybody that relies on that business. And I am sure from the conduct of my directors that they did everything in their power to save the company, to save the jobs, and they acted honourably.
High interest rates and the ending of tax relief on home improvements hit the double glazing business hard. A careful management would and should have done more to protect its staff and customers. A lot of companies went bust last year, but at £20 million, the crash of the Thermistor Group has been among the worst. John Morris says he stands to lose £1.5 million with the collapse of his company. Well over 2,000 of his customers have already lost that. It's high time the law was changed to stop companies like Thermistor taking and losing their customers' cash in this way. Surely companies should be required to have trust accounts where they have to keep our cash until we get their goods. That's what the Cork report recommended 5 years ago. It also recommended disqualifying directors like John Morris, who've had more than 3 companies collapse under their management. Had the Cork report been fully implemented, Mr. Morris's customers would have had some chance of getting their money back. The official receiver is looking into the collapse of Thermistor and we'll be giving him our dossier. Incidentally, remember the boast in the television ad about Thermistor double glazing 11 Trinity lighthouses? Trinity House would like us to point out that the company never asked their permission for the ad and the claim is not true.